firstly, thanks for the Digital Entertainment Festival for having us along today, and thank you for coming in for the panel. We've been lucky enough today to have a really exciting panel join us. Three fantastically placed people from all different sectors of the music industry, from promoters to labels to management artists. I'm going to keep the session today quite fluid. All the questions that we're going to ask will be across the board to all panelists. We'll give you a quick little bio on each of us so you can get a grasp of what it is each of us do. And then we'd also like to keep it quite engaging, being in an exciting space like music and VR. I'm quite hopeful a few of you will have a few questions at the end of it. We'll start with our bios, and I'll probably start with myself if that's okay. I'm chairing the panel today. I'm also the co-founder and CEO of MelodyVR. Sorry, COO, I do apologise, of MelodyVR. We're launching later this year the world's first virtual reality music platform. We've been working in the space for around about 2 years, and we've recently been likened to the iTunes of VR. It's a really exciting space, and it's great to be at the forefront of something. We saw a really exciting gap in the market around about 2 years ago, having worked on some numerous projects with different hardware manufacturers, but no one was really creating any compelling content. And we saw the opportunity of allowing a fan and an artist to engage in a completely new medium through VR. My personal background is live music and events. I was the commercial manager for Ibiza Rocks for a few years, and I also had a hospitality company in London specifically around music. And the first thing that I think will be an interesting question that we go through today was, how is it potentially going to affect the live industry? I won't go too much into that because I know a lot of the panelists will have an opinion on that. We're launching the app later this year, and it's going to be a pretty exciting app to launch. We've been likened to the iTunes of VR, which we're certainly not adverse to having that likening. I'm going to pass down the panel for other bios, and I'll tell you a bit more about our business as different questions get asked as we go along today. So I'd like to introduce Mark Newton.
Hi there, my name's Mark Newton. My background is in live music events. I've worked in the industry for around about 17 years, started pretty early at the age of 16. I started off initially running music events around the north of England, then spread up into Scotland, and then kind of went UK-wide. I had my first experience of running festivals outside of the UK when I was based in Ibiza for 4 years, where I worked for a brand called Ibiza Rocks, which showcased live acts and electronic DJs on a weekly basis to around about 3,000 people a week. I then set up my own festival called Hideout Festival in 2011, which we had our 6th event this year. Each year we've increased in capacity and sold out. On top of that, we also run a number of other music festivals in the UK and in Europe. This year is the first year I've also become involved with a festival called Snowbombing. This was one of the first sort of music tourism-based music festivals. It's a snow sports and music event which is held in Austria every April. And I'm also now involved with water sports and music festival based in Wales in Abersoch called Glassbutter Beach, and we're into our 2nd edition of that, which takes place next week. I think that's everything.
Fantastic.
Hi, sorry. My name's Katie Ray. I currently work for a company called Method Music. We manage Sam Smith, Disclosure, some new artists called Francis and SG Lewis. We also have a record label called Method Records, where we have 2 baby acts, very new, called Liv Dawson and Arden. And I am head of digital there. I manage the digital strategy across the management and label side, so I'm responsible for the digital marketing, so that's everything from creating content through to just sessions with artists, making them better at social media, working out the budgets on paid media and things like that. Prior to working at Method Records, I was at Modest Management for over 5 years, where I oversaw the global digital strategy for artists such as One Direction, 5 Seconds of Summer, Ollie Murs, Little Mix, Cheryl, and those kind of acts. And so, yeah, I was responsible for dealing with the labels, all the promoters, all the brand partnerships, and overseeing the whole digital strategy for those artists.
Thank you. Rosie?
Hey, I'm Rosie Foster. I work for a company called 100 Management. We are a music management company. I work with another guy who's based over in LA. We look after Zane Lowe, who is now heads up Beats One Radio, which is part of Apple Music. We also look after an actor called Netsky, who is was a drum and bass act and is now sort of becoming a much more crossover pop act. Before that, I used to work at a company called JHO Management, where I was head of digital, and we looked after a lot of electronic acts, so people like Chase and Status, Pendulum, Sub Focus, lots of sort of drum and bass and electronic music. And as head of digital, I did similar to what Katie does, so looking after everything to do with anything digital. Obviously, that job is becoming a much more important role in the music industry as time goes on, everything to do with streaming, and, you know, digital is such an important space for artists right now. And now I look after sort of everything to do with I'm a manager, so looking after everything to do with the artist, from touring to records to building their brand. Yeah, that's me.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. We're now going to engage in some questions. I'm going to ask you all questions across panels, but there'll be a leading question to each specific panellist to start. So I'd like to put the first question to Rosie, if I may. When did you first become aware of virtual reality, and what does it mean to you?
So I think that the very first time I first came across virtual reality was about 5 years ago. We were working with Pendulum, and we did something really groundbreaking with them at the time. I don't know if it was actually the very first, but it was one of the first 360 degree music videos, and we filmed it in like this weird sort of scary rundown council estate in Russia, and they had like actual people going around with real machine guns, and it was pretty terrifying. But it was the time we couldn't put it on YouTube. We had to put it in its own little flash player on a microsite that we built. But it was this idea of it being something really new and exciting, and that they had to use their mouse, because it was even sort of before smartphones were really a very common thing. So it was all mostly on desktop, and you'd use your mouse to scroll around, and you could look all around this place and be in the role of the person with the machine gun. And that was the first time I came across it. Brilliant. And then from then on, sort of, it's been more of a thing that I've seen more and more. And we've always been, the artists I've worked with have always been very into like interactive video, and I guess VR is sort of the next step for them. And the first time I came across filming live stuff in VR is when I came across Melody, who met my artist Netsky in Ibiza and told him all about it, and he was just absolutely bang up for it. And ever since, if there's been any shows that he's playing where they're at and capturing content, then we've always been
very supportive.
Well up for it.
Perfect. Thank you. Katie?
My first experience was the Pendulum video. Seeing that video, but I guess kind of actually working on it and having an opportunity to use it properly was about 2 years ago, where I finally managed to find the right thing to do. Was when I was working with 5 Seconds of Summer, and if you're not into your pop rock bands, they're 4 guys from Australia who are growing globally. They were quite obsessed with Comic-Con and things like that, and had a video around superheroes and stuff. And so we held a fan convention in LA where we flew about 50 fans, competition winners from around the world, into Universal Studios. And we had a day convention with these fans. One of the experiences was to meet the band physically, but knowing that that's what the fans wanted to do all the time, we were looking for other ways to kind of connect with them, and we'd filmed some footage of the band in the rehearsal studios, just practicing, hanging out, sitting on their phones in the studio, and just kind of general sort of day-to-day pieces. and one of the rooms was set up like a rehearsal studio, and the fans would go in there and experience virtual reality for the first time with their bands. And this was prior to them having met the band. And their reaction, they started the fans were crying, hyperventilating. We had to have people standing behind them to catch them. It was as if they were meeting the band, and we did not expect that kind of reaction from them at all. We expected it to be quite exciting and fun, but to actually get the same sort of reaction you get to meeting the band completely surprised us.
Fantastic.
And it's something, that was quite fascinating for us.
I think, I'm not sure how many of you experienced VR over the last few days, but I'm sure you've had the ability to walk around in town and see some different headsets. We've brought today, at the end, after the Q&A, some MelodyVR content, so you can see some of the similar scenarios to which Katie and Rosie have just said. It really is incredible for a fan to make that engagement, and the empathy is there, and you do feel like you're there. So I look forward to seeing you, showing you a bit more on that later. Mark, do you have any comments on your first awareness of virtual reality?
Yeah, growing up in the 1980s, my first sort of memories of it are kind of things that I'd seen on TV and films, and kind of the first wave of VR where it existed, but it was very expensive, very clunky. I can remember seeing it at home at the time as a young child and just being amazed by it, and then seeing films like Lawnmower Man when I was slightly older, and just being really sort of impressed by it, but never actually getting to experience it. It kind of went out of the public eye for quite some time, and then I remember hearing about Oculus maybe 3 years ago, kind of about a guy who had been buying old VR headsets, tweaking them, setting things up in his garage, and then it was probably around about 2 years ago now when Oculus got acquired by Facebook for $2 billion, and that kind of maybe take attention to what's going on, really. I thought if a company the size of Facebook are prepared to invest that level of money into something like virtual reality, is there going to be a big sort of future behind it? Is there going to be a big following? So started kind of paying a lot more interest to it then, following a lot of VR news on tech forums, tech websites, etc. And my first experience of VR personally was when I met yourself probably just over 18 months ago now. We met in a cafe around the corner from my house, and you pulled out a very early version of the Gear VR with some demo footage you captured, and I was sat with a headset on in a cafe full of people, kind of having a demo. Like, still now it does make me laugh when I watch people having demos for the first time, and you sat there and you're just completely immersed in this new environment, and it's just amazing watching people's reactions. And I think after that experience, I was just pretty much hooked on it and open to whatever sort of collaboration we could do across the Melody sort of platform and company and the shows that I do.
Fantastic, thank you. I think something Mark touched on the Facebook acquisition of Oculus certainly put VR back on the map. Any $2 billion acquisition from Facebook. And at this stage, from Oculus' perspective, it was still very early tech, so it was an exciting step forward for the industry. Since that point, obviously all hardware manufacturers have become very much engaged, and the count is well into the multiples of billions of what's been developed over the last 3 or 4 years. In the sort of 2 years that I've been very actively working in the space, the progression of the technology has been absolutely phenomenal. And I think we're still very much at the Game Boy era of where this technology is going to go. Game Boy's over here, PS4's over here, and every day is an exciting new day in VR. I'm not sure if anyone's seen, but Samsung are about to launch their latest addition to the headsets. That'll be 3 headsets they've produced in under pretty much 18 months, so there's certainly no slowing of the improvement of the technology over the coming months and years. Thanks for those answers, guys. I'm going to move on to our next question. All around opinion of artists, really. Obviously, from first-hand experience to Katie, I'll start with what's the opinion of your artist roster and their exposure to VR? What's the reactions?
Generally, artists love it. I think there's a couple of reasons. Depending on the artist, you've got to pitch it to the right artist, but certainly with acts like Disclosure, kind of electronic acts, it works really well as an experience because their shows tend to be very an immersive show with lighting and pyros and obviously the bass, and if you can combine the VR with the right sound quality and everything, you have got an immersive experience that is close to being there in real life. And yeah, our artists generally want to do progressive things. They want to find different ways to connect with their fan base. There's obviously another lovely thing that is a safe way to connect with your fan base. You can have a fan in the booth with you without them actually being in the booth with you. And that's always a benefit. The artist doesn't have to risk certain things. So yeah, the artists, we're all fascinated by it and really enjoying it, and really most of them want to do something different and something exciting and give their fans something more than just a standard music video that has been happening for so long. And I think also with when you talk to them about the things that can be possible through VR, you know, adding gaming elements, adding gaming to it, then again they're getting really excited about things that we can bring more elements of other areas of the campaign into this content, and that really starts to become something they can creatively get into, rather than it just being, right, this is a marketing tool that we have to tick the box with, but something they can really start to have fun and ownership with. And again, most of our artists, that's something that they really want to take to another level. And also, again, just getting playful with it in terms of tying it into the music. They often have a vision with the music when they're writing and recording the music, and then you can get much more playful and do more interesting things that I think brings it back to where sometimes they were writing the track in the first place.
Brilliant. I think something you touched on there was getting the audio right, and it's something that we've worked tirelessly hard on. I think it will never replace live in terms of VR, but if you can't get somewhere, it is an incredible application on all sort of verticals, but music specifically. And we've incorporated, in essence, what's called binaural sound into our application. So not only are you seeing it as it would, but in the way that you track your head, as if you were to turn away from a drum kit, you would also get that. So it completes that immersion.
I think for the music industry, without the sound being right, this idea is pointless.
Completely.
Like it has to have the correct sound, otherwise, sorry, I keep banging the table. Otherwise, there's no point in us doing this, because obviously, fundamentally, we're about the music.
Absolutely. I think something you also touched on there regarding sort of the artist involvement, something that obviously every artist from all music genres are incredibly creative in their own right, they're musicians, and the ability to be able to have an artist's input in what we create. Across the MelodyVR app, we've got a content library, which, as I mentioned earlier, has been likened to the iTunes of VR. We then have a live element, which we'll launch a few months after our main launch, whereby you can buy a live gig ticket as it's happening. But also the third and very exciting part for the platform from our perspective also is the ability to do interactive projects with artists, make music videos, and allow VR to engage and change in what you're seeing and what you're hearing with the ability of CGI and different overlays. It's certainly a really exciting horizon for music and VR. If I could ask that same question also to Rosie, please.
Yeah, so my artists that I've worked with in the past have always been really up for trying like new tech. I think it's definitely something you see a lot in electronic music. I guess there are a lot of geeks who make electronic music, but you know, it's all done on computers. They spend the majority of their lives on a computer in the studio, and so they've always been really into it. Next guy especially, who we've worked together with quite a lot, he's obsessed with it. He's got a HTC Vive and he plays it in his house. He just, you know, he understands that this is going to be a massive thing in the future, and that, you know, as obviously they're artists, but they're also, the majority of artists who do quite well are, you know, quite savvy businessmen as well. And I think that cottoning on to something early on that is going to be, you know, a pretty big thing further down the line is quite an important thing. And if you're into it, then I think then you can really engage with it more, and also think about interesting ways to use it. Obviously, capturing live shows it's an amazing thing, and it hasn't really been done very much, that sort of 360 experience of watching a live show. So I'm really excited to see what is going to happen when that really takes off and people can really, you know, experience whatever live show, whatever act you want to see. And I think that's quite interesting as well. in terms of smaller artists and breaking artists who, you know, they might be in America or Australia and you wouldn't necessarily get a chance to see them. And a lot of the time, I think, you know, checking out an artist live is a way to, at the very beginning, really get in touch with them and find out if you know, if they are or what the hype says they are.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be really useful for artists like that to be able to put out their shows for everyone to actually experience.
Good to hear. I think something you touched on also with Let's Go having different headsets, something that we see more and more is music is really sort of driving the force in VR. Certainly, obviously, we see that more than most potentially, but the amount of artists that have actually had a pre-order of an Oculus Rift, own a Valve, have had a Samsung for a few years, far outstrips any other sector that we're currently sort of speaking with in terms of who owns what. So it's exciting to see the adaptation.
He had an Oculus Rift as well.
Excellent.
And then he got 5. And if another one comes out, I'm sure we'll get that.
I'm going to put thanks guys, I'm going to put the next question to Mark from your more sort of promotion side or promoter side. What do you think VR means for the live industry and specific ticket sales? There's sort of a consensus out there, or has been historically, that would a promoter see a detriment in ticket sales? And I'm interested in your opinion on that.
Personally, I think it's very much complementary rather than replacing the live industry as it is. And I think you'll find for most of the promoters out there, definitely the younger promoters out there, they would see this as well, because not everyone can get to every gig they'd like to. There's so many reasons that people couldn't get to a gig. It's sold out, it's in a different location, they can't get there, they may have a disability, they might be too young to get out to the thing, they might have a family so they can't get a babysitter. For me, it's kind of just widening the appeal of music events to customers that may not be able to attend normally. I think I've read a really interesting article the other day, which was about when Sky Sports kind of came about, got the music rights for what was then Division 1, which became the Premiership. They kind of commercialised it quite heavy, kind of looked at the American business model and kind of rolled sports into that. There was kind of a lot of talk around at the time saying, this is the end of live football. People won't go there, they can sit in the houses, they can watch the matches from home, they pay a subscription and they get to watch loads more football. What they actually found was the first year of it, all attendances across the Premiership increased because there was a widened awareness and people could interact with sport a lot more than they could do normally. That increased the drive for people to go and see the experience live. I feel that it's going to be exactly the same for music. The sort of interactive experiences you're going to be able to kind of give audiences in the future as well, because like I say, we're very much in the Game Boy period of where VR can go to eventually. The sort of experiences you can give to customers in the future are going to be way beyond anything that they've ever experienced, and even way beyond a live experience to a certain degree. One of the key things that we really like from the live sector is giving the chance for the customer to be backstage, be on stage. There's no way on earth you could go to a huge music festival, 50, 60, 70,000 people there, and you can stand next to the headline act on stage as they're singing their biggest hits. And that is something that Melody and VR allows people to do, really. And at the same time, for backstage, no one sees what happens when the artist, before they go on stage, when they come off stage, they don't see the preparation that goes into it. Even what an artist's dressing room looks like, what a green room looks like, people just don't have any of that experience. And it's like, to be able to sit on a seat in a dressing room and watch the artist getting ready for a show or giving an interview and sitting there like you were sat next to the artist, it's another degree of sort of immersive experience to if you were at that concert anyway. So I feel that it adds so much more to where we are at the minute.
I think it's a really good sentiment to hear that from Mark, because the whole MelodyVR team, it shares that complete approach. I think the idea, as Mark rightly said, of allowing a fan that's on the other side of the world to get to a concert they would never be able to get to, or entering into a licensed venue, which is often why a gig is 18 plus or 17 plus, is it's license driven to that space. VR more or less sort of eradicates all of that. From the live element, it's always an interesting statistic that I read many years ago, strangely enough before getting involved in virtual reality, but the last Led Zeppelin gig, I believe in 2007 at the O2 in London, 27,000 tickets were sold in a matter of seconds. Over 20 million people applied for those 27,000 tickets. Tickets were exchanging hands on the secondary ticket market of an average price of £8,000 a ticket. The most expensive pair went for £88,000 for the front row. It's the ability of something that we've built. It's very attractive from promoters and all of the different rights holders in that we can eliminate a lot of that secondary ticket market. In that, it certainly wasn't the correct rights holders from labels and publishers and artists that got the uplift of that £88,000 of the ticket. It was a ticket out. So the idea of being able to sell a limitless capacity in virtual reality to have the best seats in the house is something that we're really excited about and think is going to be a really positive step for the industry. Interested to take your opinion as well, Daisy.
Sorry. I think, you know, promoters and agents need to look at it like we do with any other content, be it just filming the DVD or content we're pushing out on social media for promoting the tour. So if we're announcing a tour in South America, and obviously we've just played London, then pushing out that content to audiences in South America, then hopefully when they come, when the artist then travels to South America, that's increased their desire to go and watch them. I've just been over to the tech hub and flown in space. I know I haven't really flown in space. Like, it's not, I think we're all know enough that we're not actually at the gig. It's not exactly the same. It can be very close and it can be a great experience that stirs emotions and excitement and similar emotions to what you get at a gig, but it's not the same as being there. And so agents and promoters need to look at it as a tool. We also know that, you know, generally we sell more tickets than we sell music from our side, and you know we hopefully like Stephen said, when we got the ratio of, you know, demand is 8 to 1 on a ticket or whatever, that those extra people we're also then including into the performance through VR. We're then hopefully also driving them through to music, and that's obviously something we can do with the VR, is then connect it to sales and, you know, iTunes and everything, you know, when we get there, and streaming and driving more sales to our music, and that's ultimately what we're all trying to do from a label perspective. So it's got to be looked at as another platform for us to use as marketing. I had another point, but I can't remember what it was. But yeah, I think it's foolish to think that it would ruin live. I think it's there to enhance, and it's something to be welcomed from all areas, and marketers should be embracing it as a tool to spread the message. Yeah, we as marketeers are all about creating chatter. Digital marketers are all about creating chatter online, and this is something that can do that. Did you see last night? I did this. I can't wait for when they come to my city to actually be there and experience it for real. When they, you know, discos at Drop Latch, the roar from the crowd is incredible, and you only really get that sense when you're there. It comes close on VR, but really when you're there, it's something very special, and people want to be at that moment.
Completely agree. I think something outside of the app that we're doing a lot with is the ability to allow artists to have 360 2D content within their socials. So once we've captured a performance, as Katie rightly said, the ability to then put that out there and show another country this is the tour that's coming up. So we support, you know, across the sector all artists with their Facebook and YouTube, and produce 360 show reels and demos and clips and teasers. Obviously the industry is so incredibly new. You know, we're literally at the tip of the iceberg in its complete infancy, so as much exposure from us as a business to support artists and marketeers and head of digital and promoters is something we're incredibly keen on doing at the moment. Be really keen to get Rose's opinion on that last question as well.
So obviously I agree with what both these guys have said. I don't think it's any sort of hindrance to the live sector. You know, we've been live streaming shows for ages, obviously just as a normal, plain, boring, like, watch it as if you're watching it on TV. It's all there to help grow your audience and you know, promote a festival or show. You know, it's there for a reason. I think another area that I feel really interested in, just to sort of go on a tangent, is what VR could sort of bring, obviously with live shows, especially again with a lot of electronic music, people are really pushing the boundaries of what they do with visuals and production, and you already have like people doing crazy things with things that look 3D on stage, and I think that it's really interesting and exciting to think about what could potentially be done with VR to enhance a show that you're at. So whether you could use CGI, you know, I'm sure that a lot of artists will be at the forefront of this. Lots of artists are. I was reading about someone who is an Iranian electronic artist who's creating an album in VR, and I think that is going to be something we see as a thing that people don't just have. You know, even Beyonce created a visual album for her latest album. It's a movie. I don't think it's going to be that long before people, you know, an artist has made an album and it's also a VR experience, which is so exciting. What could be created with that? Like,
we've actually had over the last probably 6 to 8 weeks a fair handful of artists say we'd like to release a bonus track on the app to supplement the traditional release, and as you said, it's going to become more and more. We envisage within a fairly short space of time artists will have the aspiration, as you said, to release an entire album in VR where their fan can actually engage and be in that album. It's an incredible...
And then, you know, potentially like partnerships. So Spotify is becoming now very... It's pulling video content into its platform, and it's going to become both video and audio. And there's obviously, you know, lots of sort of conversations and arguments to be had about whether that's right. But if they do, then what's to say that, you know, a VR company couldn't be somehow integrated with Spotify, so you've got it all in one platform.
I think it's really exciting as well, like especially if an artist released a concept album, and the concept you actually get to live in it and experience it as you're watching, as you're listening to the album itself. I think it allows an artist to be a lot more creative than they are currently, because you can go into an immersive environment for an hour and live the album. So it's so much more of a sort of personal experience to be able to do something like that.
Or even it could be, you know, there's so much stuff now with production of live shows. With Subfocus, we had his show, and all of the audio that he played in Ableton, which was all cut up and remixed live on stage, that triggered off lights within his show, and triggered off different effects. So each time he did the show, it was a little bit different. But imagine if that could be within the experience that you were having, you know, in the headset, if different sounds could trigger different things. And I can imagine it could be a really interesting tool for artists to use to create music even at some point.
Absolutely. I think touching on the sort of the interactivity, we've done some work with The Who recently, and the ability to effectively within the interactive environment, something, I apologise if I'm patronising anyone, but there's something called multi-tracking, where you're basically capturing all essence of the audio, and within an interactive experience, if you're just looking at Roger Daltrey, we'd have the ability to drop out the rest of the audio, or you just hear Pete Townshend's riff for 30 seconds, and then when you look away, the rest of the audio all picks up. It's and again, as I say, we're literally at just the very start of what's going to be possible, so it's hugely exciting to be at the forefront. I'm quite conscious of time. I think we've got about another 10-15 minutes, so I'll rattle through the last few questions and then we'll go over to the floor for a Q&A. We've touched on this a little bit, but I think it'd be quite good just to sort of bring it back round and maybe sort of bring it together a little bit. Specifically more Rosie and Katie initially. VR, how will it affect a fan engagement when you're sort of planning your media and marketing plans and your next big push out for a specific artist? How do you think a fan engagement in VR will be achievable? I don't mind who starts.
How do I think it would be achievable? I think we do global releases now. That's a fact of our industry, and it sounds daft, but we didn't used to. We now everything goes out, and obviously we have one artist, and we haven't mastered cloning yet. So it allows the way that I look at it is it does allow us. We have to prioritise, and generally UK and US obviously get the priority in terms of our artists being in market time of release. And the impact that has, we do absolutely see directly on sales. But the way looking that hopefully we can start warming up other markets, certainly as we're breaking them. We've got artists like Francis and Ashley Lewis who are starting to travel internationally now. if we can start looking at doing VR in those other markets and helping use them along with all the other areas of marketing that we're doing to warm up those audiences, and like I said, creating chatter, creating those moments that then when the artist steps into market, finally, there is already an awareness and a fan base that has started to build rather than going cold into market. And I think that level of fan engagement is absolutely possible and is a great way for us to start working. The other day we just did a standard stream. A guy from Disclosure streamed live through Facebook from his kitchen. It was kind of off the cuff thing, but it was very laid back, obviously quite stripped back compared to how you see Disclosure performing normally. There was a massive response. We've had, over 3 million reach on Facebook for that content alone. Lots of people wanted to come round and be in his kitchen with him, obviously, and I think with things like VR, we had an opportunity there between 8 and 10 o'clock to reach globally, and we did really have a big global audience there, and I think we could start then to just kind of bringing those fans into those kind of more personal moments as well, where Guy's actually in his kitchen, and he was with his mates, and he was DJing, and people were chatting, and it was creating, the community, and I think it was a big part of fan engagement. I think when you introduce a VR to it and you're in the kitchen with him and all the other fans from around the world, it creates a real moment. Absolutely. That then just keeps the engagement level very high for us, and progresses us onto the next stage when we're then making the next announcement. Guy intends to do more of these streams, and so they become regular things from different venues, and that is an easy way for him to stay put, and all the fans come to him, if you like, and to engage regularly and consistently with his fans, because they are travelling constantly. But those times when he is at home to do those things, we definitely see an uplift for it. And so then growing that experience to something in VR would change the game again for us.
Great. I think something you touched on there, the empathy value as well, that it allows to feel like you're in Guy's kitchen, and it's just an incredible application. Rosie, I know Netsky's quite keen on everything fan engagement, and I know he's a big advocate of VR, so how do you kind of think specifically Netsky is embracing it with his fans?
Yeah, I think it's what's quite interesting, and something we've not done, is determine who of his fan base, what proportion of them even know about it or can use it, because I do think it's still pretty niche, really. Completely, yeah. It's not that cheap to get hold of them necessarily, and it's obviously quite a forward-thinking techie audience who are gonna. But I would definitely say that quite a lot of his audience are like that. Yeah. So obviously it's finding who's got it and who's got the capacity to do it. For sure. But then once you find who they are, it's the sort of thing that appeals to, they call them like superfans, those people who aren't just going to just casually engage with them and just, sort of, it's the people who do look at everything they do and retweet everything that they retweet, it's them people who really want to be involved. And in terms of like business as well, those are the fans that, will spend the most money on your artist. So absolutely. This is definitely the sort of thing that can be monetized quite cleverly and quite well. You can make an experience for someone, I think, with this that is, second to nothing, apart from actually going and hanging out, with them in the DJ booth at Ibiza Rocks, whatever, which you just can't do that with lots of people. But this could be definitely a way to do it and to follow them around the world, because there's only so much you can get an idea of where someone is by the odd Instagram photo or periscoping. Obviously there's more and more ways now for artists to share what they're doing, especially these guys who travel a lot. But this could be something to really open up people's eyes of what their life is like, and that's what fans want. Absolutely.
I think you touched something really good there with the superfan. That's certainly your first engaged audience, but from our perspective at Melody, we obviously want to ensure that it's across the fan base. So something we've certainly spoke with Mark from a promoter's perspective is the accessibility of a Google Cardboard It's an amazing piece of kit. It's either free. I know if you bought a Happy Meal in Sweden a few months ago, your Happy Meal box turned into a Google Cardboard. The New York Times are giving out millions a year. You're going to see a lot more from a company branding perspective over the coming months and years of just giveaways. And I think speaking for Mark here, he might disagree, but the ability for someone that's actually been in attendance to a festival or a gig through merchandise or at the point that you purchase a ticket to have a Google Cardboard that's branded with the artist or with the festival as a giveaway as part of the ticket, and then the ability to revisit something you've been to is something we find a lot is if you're at Wildlife, if you're at Hideout, they're vast spaces. Trying to see everything you want to see at a festival is actually sometimes quite a nightmare. It takes you 40 minutes to get across to another stage. If the weather's bad, all these kind of things come into play. So the idea of people also in attendance then being able to relive it and see artists and performances they didn't see is something that's we're really keen on promoting. I'm going to swiftly move on because I'm a bit conscious of time. Final question really, and this is across the board. Interested to see how you feel virtual reality will change the landscapes of your businesses over the coming months and years. Maybe start with Mark on that.
Yeah, of course. I think as well as just being able to record the performances and then customers who either were at the event experience them again or customers who couldn't get to the event experience them for the first time. I think specifically for us where we have festivals in quite unique places like Snowbombing's at the top of a mountain, it's very sort of
It was quite a lot of fun getting our cameras up to the top of mountains.
It was really fun.
Or Hideout, which is on an island on a beach off the coast of Croatia, or Glass Butter, which is on a beach with water sports everywhere. I think it helps capturing those environments so as a marketing tool for customers who haven't been to the event before that are maybe considering it. I think that is a massive thing for us in the future. For people to go, oh, I quite fancy snowbombing next year, trying a VR experience of a performance that's taken place and being on the top of a mountain and seeing Kasabian do an acoustic set at the top of a mountain, that is something that would then draw the customer in and make them more likely to convert and buy a ticket for the following year. So for us, it's capturing the content of the event as it's taking place and using that as an experience for people to view it, but also it's very much a marketing tool for us to kind of to sell the event to people moving forwards. And I think as the technology progresses, obviously I know quite a lot about VR now, and looking at where the tech's going to go, it's not far away from being able to have an avatar of yourself, an avatar of your friend, watching a live music event in another country. I could be in LA, they could be in London. We're watching an event that's taking place in Rio de Janeiro, and we are stood next to each other. We can see ourselves next to each other, and we can hold a conversation the same way as we could as if we were in a gig all together in the same room. And I think that something like that it's just a next level experience, and something that probably wouldn't have been thought of 5 years ago, if not even 2-3 years ago.
I think I completely agree. It's groundbreaking technology, and as we all know, it's been around in some form for many years. But numerous things lined up, as we touched on earlier, from hardware manufacturers to to the fact that we've all got smartphones, which in essence I'm preempting a potential Q&A question here, but we often get asked how long will it take for everyone to have a virtual reality device. I tend to pull out my smartphone. I say, if you've got a smartphone, you've got one in your pocket. The technology's in there. When the headset's released, they're more or less just enabling that technology to come out. So 1.43 billion smartphones in the world currently on contract. So the outreach to an audience is potentially huge in a very short period of time. Rosie, your thoughts on how you feel VR might change the landscape of your business?
So I think it's another way to expand it and do more interesting things. The music industry has been changing so much, so quickly in the last couple of years. I remember talking about that pendulum, going back to that pendulum video, must be about 6 years ago, and that was groundbreaking. And now, and like anybody can do a 360-degree video on Facebook, and you tilt it and look around it, and like anyone can do that. And just to see what sort of leaps and bounds music and digital has sort of come on, I mean, it's really quite tough to predict even what it's going to be like in a year. I definitely think it'll open up lots of new, different revenue streams and also things for fans as well, ways to get your content, which is becoming the most important thing in music. The most important thing for an artist is, the content that they can put out, and there's going to be all these new exciting ways of getting that to fans and customers.
I think, completely concur, and something that we found, and has been our business model since day one. As a company, we fund the content creation, so rather than going out and being a production company or work for hire, we as a business fund all artists' content creation, and then at the point of monetization via the app, all stake and rights holders get a revenue share. So we've been welcomed across the industry from all rights holders, from labels, from publishers, from management, from artists, from venues promoters, that we're not licensing a back catalogue, which traditional audio platforms obviously do. They, in essence, buy the rights to then exploit it. We're actually building brand new content, which in turn has completely fresh revenue attached. So it's an exciting time. Katie, your opinion on those last points?
I mean, I think I've said it really, but kind of to summarise, it's just, it adds another level of creativity for us, which is exciting as a marketeer and for artists. And it allows us to reach fans globally, which in this day and age we've got to cut through an awful lot of noise, and we've got to keep the longevity of fans globally, and we have to work much harder to do that now. And playing live is our biggest tool that artists have, actually performing, and this allows us to keep connecting with the fans that we've made in Japan, and we've made in South America, and we've made in Australia, when we can't get out to those markets all the time. But we need to keep those fan bases. Like Rosie said, the music industry has changed massively now, and we have to think globally, whereas it very much didn't. Probably even a lot of it still doesn't, to be honest. We have to, as digital marketers, we have to work very hard to remind people. But I think, the more times we can create great quality content that gives an experience and creates emotions and generates excitement for fans, the more opportunity we have to convert those to people buying music, to buying tickets, to buying merchandise, and creating a connection with the fans and growing fan bases, and therefore creating longevity with our artists.
Fantastic, thank you guys. I think that allows us around about 5 or 6 minutes for any questions from the floor. So thanks for everyone listening, and keen to answer any questions across the panel that anyone may have. Thank you.
As my first question is, I know with the concert experience and the live experience, it is a lot of sensory detail that goes beyond just sight and sound, and I was wondering, are you exploring any applications into other sort of sensory details like feeling, temperature, smells, that sort of thing, to really bring this experience full on for anyone who might be using a VR set?
It's a fantastic question. Sorry, I didn't catch your name.
It's John.
Cool. Cheers, John. Absolutely. I think something that we're very conscious of early on is it is in its infancy. I've said it a few times, but getting out the basics of audio and visual initially is our key sort of goal. But then, being able to bring in the feeling of bass through the music, through different technology that exists, and the exploring of, as you say, something that would feel. It's such an exciting space, and inevitably, it's on our roadmap. I'll say that, in terms of being able to bring in other sensory experiences, and it will develop a lot over the coming months and years. Thank you. Any other questions at all?
I can add in on the smell thing, just from working with boy bands. The smell thing would react incredibly well with fans. It sounds gross, but they know what aftershave they wear, that kind of thing, and also just with a lot of artists who release perfumes and things like that. When you've got female artists doing perfumes, if you're watching something with them backstage and you start to smell the perfume, and then you can go on and connect. Certainly from a brand and product point of view, it definitely works with our artists done well and right. there's definitely a connection there with fans that, from my perspective and management and things like that, would be of interest with brand conversation.
I think a slight development on that also is the ability of something we're looking at. When you do see your favourite artist and your favourite boy band and you're watching their experience, you'll be able to, in essence, and this is potentially a few years off from becoming mainstream, but you look at your favourite artist and you like their outfit, and the ability to then, the app and the technology knows your size, knows who you are, where you live, and the ability to look at that and go, I'd like that outfit, and then give you the options of where you'd be able to buy. So it's, the whole next level of retail is certainly something that will be exploited fairly heavily in virtual reality over the coming months and years. Please.
When with MelodyVR, how difficult did you find it to convince people at the start to be creating content for it, and how much easier has that become over the last sort of couple of years?
Really good question. When we started, it wasn't easy. It generally wasn't easy. From most people in the music industry, as has been said on the panel, are quite forward-thinking and creative, but we were presenting this idea that to most was completely alien, and to a lot it's still completely alien. I think from a music perspective, digital came sort of in a real storm. It came overnight. So then the industry is much more switched on to looking for new technology. How that's changed in the last 2 years, we started working with a few select artists. We've now worked with over 400 mainstream artists. And everyone sees it as something positive, as we've explored today, that there's no negativity to it. It's fresh revenue, it's exciting, it's something for fans to do. So we now even have artists contacting us as a business to see if we can capture shows. So it's certainly been a different horizon than it was 2 years ago. Still obviously a phenomenal amount of technicalities and legalities in getting the capture and getting it licensed for exploitation, but it's certainly a lot easier than it was a couple of years ago. Thank you. Please.
Where's the expertise for this? And I ask this because if this technology could transform the industry, then surely Silicon Valley and its deep pockets, and if they're developing the hardware, couldn't they snatch this opportunity yet again from the established industry?
I think it's, again, fantastic question. We're fortunate enough as a business to be very well connected and working very closely with said manufacturers on the West Coast. As a rule of thumb, their business is hardware, they're not content creators. So they want to sell 100 million headsets, which in turn will mean more streaming, more bandwidth on your phones, more downloads, etc., etc. So from our side, we've been welcomed with arms that the hardware manufacturers are crying out for content. One of the things that we've experienced is if they started the smartphone and all it did was the same as the first Nokia, no one would have bought a smartphone. But the fact that you could look at your emails, you could look at pictures, you could download apps, it's that ability of enabling hardware manufacturers to have compelling content as a reason for people to acquire and purchase the hardware. So we don't really see it as something that they're going to get involved in, and we're fortunate in terms of physical creation. There will be obviously spin-offs and sponsored bits and pieces, as there already are, but as a core vertical for those companies, it's making the hardware and developing the tech. Thank you. Please.
Hello. I just wanted to clarify what you were saying about the business model before and about actually physically creating content. So I guess my question is, are you going out and creating and capturing all of that stuff yourself? Are you licensing other people to do that on your behalf? And kind of where does that go in terms of scalability? How far can you send that? Or are you relying eventually on people capturing their own content, user-generated, and putting that up on the platform?
Thank you. Really, really good question. We are a complete end-to-end, so from R&Ding our own camera technology, through to the capture, through to the post and pre-production, everything's done in-house at Melody. Scalability-wise, we're working across the globe from LA down to Dubai. Fortunate enough to have recently become the world's first publicly listed virtual reality stock. So we're well funded to be able to grow R&D, new technology, and work in more territories. You touched something really nicely on, could it ever be user-defined? I think we'll allow YouTube to be the YouTube of VR and 360. Hugely exciting, the ability for someone to be able to stand with their phone in an audience and put that up onto YouTube or Facebook. In terms of what we're producing, it's a world-class music platform with pre-agreed camera locations right next to artists, added value content. So there's a huge market, and we welcome as many people capturing 360 and getting out online as humanly possible. But our business is very different. It's in partnership with artists and right holders and labels.
Hi, my name's Lee. Over here.
Hey, sorry, Susie.
Hi. You were talking about concerts,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously you'll have all the different camera views. Would there be a moment where you would have cameras on the actual artists themselves? So in a band, etc., so you can actually flip views, you can be a drummer, you can be the singer, you can see everything. Would there ever be anything like that?
What we do is very close. One of the key problems, as I'm sure a lot of you know, in virtual reality today is motion sickness. It's been quite hard for people to overcome. The way that we're rolling out MelodyVR and with the global presence is we didn't want to launch an app that made lots of people feel sick. It wasn't really what we'd been planning to do. So we have, as you rightly said, sort of multi-camera points. So not quite the artist wearing the camera, but across sort of on a drum riser, by the guitarist, in the pit, in the VIP, on the stage B, anywhere that's a compelling location. And in turn, within the app, it then gives you the ability to real-time move to any one of those points, so you can stand next to the boys from Disclosure, and then you can go down into the crowd, or you can go into their dressing room. So that's the way we've sort of overcome anything motion sickness based. Obviously, again, as the technology improves, that will be a less of an issue. It might be a tall ask for artists to wear cameras on their heads, although a few have offered, so we're certainly exploring that at the moment. Thank you. Any other questions? Great.
Hi, I have a question for Stephen. In the near future, maybe around summer 2017, do you foresee an opportunity for young talented graduates to join MelodyVR on an internship?
100%. We're actively recruiting, we're growing, and love to speak to you after this.
Okay, sure, great, thank
you.
Amazing.
Hello, I guess this is probably going to be a bit of a leading question, but what is the turnaround in pushing out that content once it's been initially filmed, if it was maybe one set from a live gig?
Really good question. Something that we've obviously been concentrating incredibly hard on the last 2 years is building a phenomenally large library. Obviously, the essence of the new technology and the file sizes is the work in post-production to actually get the finished product is phenomenally hard. With all the technology in our different render farms, obviously outside of live, which when we launch will be live with a slight delay, to content, which obviously gives you the ability to put a bit more time through post. Around about 24 hours, we'll have something up on the platform pretty swiftly. Currently, we're working out what our launch content is, so across all music genres, from grime to classical to heritage to modern pop, and then we'll have a rollout release on a weekly basis of fresh new content. But yeah, around sort of from captured to out on the platform, once the release schedule's taken place, it'll be sort of 24 to 48 hours. Just on that point, it will improve obviously over time, but as it's so new, there's no sort of hard, fast rules as to how it works currently, so we're having to write a lot of those rules ourselves. Thank you. I think I'm getting waved at from the back that that's our time, so thanks ever so much. Really engaging audience, so thank you, and thank you to the panel.
Thank you.